King Tiandao went up to the pagoda. His willpower entered into it, causing it to rotate. Golden light fell upon it like bolts of lightning. King Tiandao went up to the pagoda. His willpower entered into it, causing it to rotate. Golden light fell upon it like bolts of lightning. Outside the pagoda, the divine golden dragon was circling it, slowly materializing into what looked like a real dragon. Images of more pagodas fell continuously onto Yi Futian's massive figure. All was dead silent throughout the vastness of the sky. Everyone was watching the scene unfolding before them. This was the bet between Emperor Li and Yi Futian. It would probably determine the imperial advisor's fate. The imperial advisor of Dali dynasty looked at the figure in front of him. The once handsome youth had become incredibly large and tall. It seemed that he was trying to protect the old man. A hurricane swept over towards them, making his white hair fly in the wind. However, he had not yet used even the slightest bit of his power. His powers had been permanently damaged, and so there was nothing he could do other than watch everything unfold. The light of the pagoda was extremely bright in that suffocating space. After what seemed like a long time, King Tiandao was finally able to control the pagoda completely. He stepped forward with a cold look on his face. He looked down at Yi Futian. He knew why Emperor Li was doing this. The true killing power of the pagoda did not lie in what it displayed on the outside. As long as Yi Futian nodded, he would be killed beyond all shadow of a doubt. Even if it had been him who had to bear the 3 attacks that would happen when he activated the pagoda, he would still be in danger. So how much more so would be Yi Futian, who was merely a saint of true self. When Yi Futian died, the others from the Crimson Dragon realm would flee as well. The others did not know the imperial advisor or even Emperor Xia. They were not Emperor Xia's subordinates, so they would not necessarily give their lives for him. Moreover, Emperor Xia himself would not dare to gamble the lives of all his people here to save the imperial advisor. "Die," said King Tiandao in a low voice. He finally made his move. There was a loud noise as shining divine beings were released from the pagoda. Boom! A shocking noise rang out as Yi Futian's massive body was smashed by a colossal pagoda that covered him completely. Endless destructive lightning ravaged his flesh, and he was crushed by a terrible pressure. The dragon roared as Yi Futian raised his head. He seemed to have appeared in the space in the middle of the pagoda. The divine golden dragon rushed down with a roar and entered directly into his mind, smashing into his spiritual willpower. The dragon's roar sought to shake his very soul. Crack, crack, crack. Inch by inch, cracks were appearing in Yi Futian's massive form. His mind shook, and he felt half dead from fright as his flesh was destroyed. He was too strong. This power would not only destroy his body, it would also destroy his spiritual willpower. So this was a weapon of mass destruction. Yi Futian's massive form could not even withstand a single attack. Everyone's hearts trembled as they watched. Emperor Xia's eyes were cold as he watched. It seemed like he was ready to get involved at any moment. If Yi Futian could not hold out, then he would get involved, even if it started a war. He could not watch Yi Futian die. Yi Futian had made a bet, but he did not want him to give up his life. "Continue," said Emperor Li. His voice was calm. He did not ask for King Tiandao to stop. If he wanted to kill him, he would have to do it all with one sustained effort and not give Yi Futian a chance to breathe. You would have to crush him. You would have to destroy his body and cut out his soul. No matter how outstandingly talented Yi Futian was, today he would be left behind forever. "Very well," answered King Tiandao. He launched another attack that split the earth and cracked the sky. The endless divine light of the great path gathered together and fell upon the pagodas. The pagodas seemed to grow taller and rotated above Yi Futian's head. All of the attacks were falling upon Yi Futian. They were extremely accurate, and not a bit of power was wasted. The several unblemished saints by Emperor Li were protecting the imperial advisor with their will. Even though the attacks were incredibly accurate and would not hit him by accident, the imperial advisor was so weak that he could not bear even the slightest disturbance. Before Emperor Li made his decision, they could not let him die here. The endless divine light transformed into another pagoda that wrapped around Yi Futian. The storm of golden pagodas spun, flattening everything, continuously shattering his Chonglu battle form. The terrible, destructive storm seemed to be at the nirvana level. Its fury was continuously renewed. The Chonglu battle form seemed about to collapse, and his legs seemed unable to support him as he was cut down by the terrible force. It appeared that he would fall. Endless arms of flames of the way stretched out, pressing against the ground to hold him up, but the terrible destructive light destroyed them. Boom! Yi Futian could only feel a divine pagoda crushing down on him. Magma seemed to be condensing from his flames of the way, turning into an indestructible solid. But cracks still appeared in it. What was worse was that his body was relatively unharmed compared to what he was suffering in his mind. With pagodas and firelight dancing before his eyes, the imperial advisor of Dali's robes fluttered in the wind. He looked over at the battle form that was being crushed in front of him. Suddenly, he found himself thinking of a previous destructive battle. At that time, he had been in Emperor Li's good graces. Thus, when he had entered the Dali dynasty, he had been named imperial advisor. He had been devoted to the dynasty and trained many cultivators. Today, many of the amazing cultivators of the Dali dynasty had once been under his guidance. He did not want to see the future Dali dynasty suffer the kind of destruction he had once faced. At the same time as the Dali dynasty was rising, he had taught disciples and found a place for Feishue. He had thought that life would always be like that. If he could protect the dynasty as it prospered and spend more time with Feishue, he would have been satisfied. Because Feishue spent so much time sleeping, the two of them spent more time separated than together. The days had passed like this for many years. But since Feishue was always in the realm of sleep, and had been so young, he had had to move forward alone in order to protect Feishue. Yi Futian's appearance had changed everything. Everything in the world has a destiny. In the end, it had been impossible for things to continue as he had wished. But no matter what, everything that had happened before had been destined to happen, and so he could accept them with a clear conscience. Even if he died, he would have no regrets. But those disciples who had studied under him for a time were not willing to let him die. The destructive storm was tearing through Yi Futian's battle form. It seemed like he was about to fall. A stronger force was brewing and could fall at any time. Emperor Xia's aura was growing stronger. It seemed like he was preparing to attack. But just at that moment, an even stronger aura burst out from Emperor Li. He did not look at Yi Futian but at Emperor Xia. Emperor Xia, he said, the winner and loser of the previous battle have already been decided. Let's have another one, shall we? On saying this, he stepped forward and suddenly descended right in front of Emperor Xia. He had obviously guessed what Emperor Xia was thinking. He would not let Emperor Xia interrupt King Tiandao while he was killing Yi Futian. Emperor Li was so strong once he decided to act. In a flash, the entire palace was filled with his power. Emperor Xia raised his hand to attack, forcing his opponent's energy to disperse. The great army of Emperor Xia's realm was behind him. The two of them shot up into the clouds. There was a loud noise, and destructive light boomed. If the two of them had not gone up into the sky, countless people would have been killed by their attacks. Emperor Li was gambling with the lives of everyone in his palace. He was betting that Emperor Xia would not put up a fight. His beloved daughter Xia Qingyuan was there as well. Boom! At that moment, King Tiandao launched his third attack. Everyone's hearts were beating wildly as they stared at Yi Futian. His battle form was cracking inch by inch as it continuously collapsed. A lightning bolt shot into him, piercing through his body. The pressure was crushing him down. He turned his huge eyes towards the imperial advisor. Why are you doing this? The imperial advisor's long hair flew in the wind as he stared at Yi Futian. This was not the outcome he had wished for. He did not want to see Yi Futian gamble his own life for his. However, he saw that Yi Futian was smiling. Blood was flowing from his mouth. As the heavens' movement is ever vigorous, so must a wise man ceaselessly strive. These words echoed throughout Emperor Li's mind. These were the words that he had said to Yi Futian. Now Yi Futian was giving them back to him. When cultivating the great path, a gentleman should be continually improving himself. Why should he seek death? That was nirvana. Looking into those smiling eyes, the imperial advisors smiled as well. But even as he smiled, his eyes grew wet. He slowly stood up. Even though the years weighed down on him, he still stood straight. He had the backbone of a gentleman. As heaven's movement is ever vigorous, so must a wise man ceaselessly strive. The imperial advisor looked up into the sky. A terrible storm was whipping across the land, and a brilliant light was flashing. His body was still extremely fragile, and it seemed as if a gust of wind could knock him over. But within that weak body lay an unyielding heart. Boom, boom, boom. Destructive attacks were still shattering Yi Futian's battle form and even smashing into his body. His spiritual will was also under devastating attack. But his eyes were still bright. "You're still not dead?" King Tiandao's face darkened. "You have had your 3 attacks. Release the imperial advisor," came a voice from up in the sky. "But as for the army that Yi Futian is leading, destroy them." The words, "destroy them," fell from the sky like a bolt of lightning, entering directly into everyone's minds. It seemed that Emperor Li still wanted to do this. He had only promised to let the imperial advisor go. He had not promised that after 3 attacks, he would stop fighting altogether. King Tiandao could take this chance to kill Yi Futian. Yi Futian had no chance to escape. As long as he abided by Emperor Li's conditions, he would die for sure. "Yes, Your Highness," said King Tiandao clearly. He had a fierce desire to kill Yi Futian. The unblemished saint's power disappeared from the imperial advisor's body, and at the same time, they tried to undo his bindings. "Don't trouble yourselves," whispered the imperial advisor. As he said this, the bindings on him shattered into pieces. The destructive hurricane swept out, sending the unblemished saints around him flying. Brilliant light shot up from his body into the sky. Just as King Tiandao launched another attack, he raised his fist. Dunk. With a loud noise, an incomparably huge pagoda fell, but it was blocked by a huge palm print that covered the sky. It was big enough to block the entire sky in one direction. Countless beams of divine light fell upon the imperial advisor. His white hair gradually disappeared, and his wrinkles faded. His cloudy eyes became dazzlingly bright again. His calm voice rang out through the palace. "From now on, I will no longer obey Emperor Li. I am no longer the imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Everyone's hearts were beating fiercely as they watched. Everyone's hearts were beating fiercely as they watched. They saw the imperial advisor standing there in his worn-out robes. Although he had been rejuvenated, his body still looked frail. But even so, a brilliant divine light shone around him, and a formation flashed into existence. The ancient characters, strong, flowing, leave, and threshold, circled around him, making the storm of the great path grow stronger and stronger. He looked up into the sky and began to rise into the air. Everyone's hearts were pounding. The imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty had destroyed his powers. So what was happening now? He raised his hand, covering the sky and blocking the divine pagoda that was crushing down. Yi Futian looked up a little bit. When he saw what was happening, a bright smile appeared on his face. As the heavens' movement is ever vigorous, so must a wise man ceaselessly strive. This was the imperial advisor. He had permanently destroyed his powers because he had not wanted to leave for the sake of Yen Yuan and the others. However, he had reached nirvana. When one reached the nirvana level, dying was not that easy. He may have destroyed his powers, but the nirvana within him could be born again. The imperial advisor had done this. This was true nirvana, even stronger than it had been in the past. King Tiandao looked shocked. He could faintly feel a transcendent power. It was frightening. The imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty had gone beyond the peak in a single step. His body may have been weak and frail, but he could shake the earth with his very thoughts. Boom! He activated the pagoda, and divine light shone, splitting the very air as it tried to flatten down everything below it. It was trying to kill the imperial advisor before he had been wholly revived. The image of a huge divine pagoda appeared, crushing downwards. It seemed strong enough to break someone's very soul. The imperial advisor looked up. Brilliant divine light was falling onto him from the sky. His aura was still quite weak, but when he stretched out his hand, a mighty figure appeared, moving in tandem with him. He raised his hand and pointed at the pagoda. At that moment, countless beams of light fell upon the pagoda at the same time. A loud dong rang out through the sky. In the next instant, countless cracks appeared in the divine pagoda as everyone watched with trembling eyes. The cracks spread and widened. Bang! The pagoda shattered as the divine light swept over it. A Nirvana-level ritual implement had been shattered. What level of power could do this? Renhuang level? They could all naturally feel that the Imperial Advisor had not become a Renhuang yet. A Renhuang would be even more terrible than this. Moreover, to break through to the Renhuang level was not that easy. Even if your state of mind changed, it did not mean that you would necessarily be able to break through. But even though he had not become a Renhuang, he was still close to that level. The Imperial Advisor of the Dali dynasty was at the peak of the Nirvana level. He was subordinate only to Emperor Li. His current breakthrough only proved that he had already touched the path of Renhuang. Yi Futian knew that he had already reached the level of Ninth Servant. Maybe he was even higher. But Ninth Servant looked down on all the Nirvana-level cultivators. They had relied on forming the sword matrix of the void to hurt Ninth Servant, but even so, he had crushed Li Kai, and they were unable to block him. From this, the Ninth Servant's power and confidence were evident. And right now, the Imperial Advisor was giving Yi Futian a similar feeling of invincibility. He had destroyed a Nirvana-level ritual implement by pointing at it. A look of shock came over King Tiandao's face. He shot up into the sky, trying to escape. The Imperial Advisor was too frightening then. He was making him afraid. "King Tiandao," said the Imperial Advisor. He clenched his fist, and suddenly the sky-covering palm print shot downward. King Tiandao felt a suffocating pressure covering him and slowing his movements. The palm print grabbed King Tiandao. His aura surged with power, but he was unable to escape. The Imperial Advisor was still floating up. He kept going until he was level with King Tiandao. "Imperial Advisor, are you going to betray the Dali dynasty completely?" roared King Tiandao. "I have already died once. I have no more association with the Dali dynasty. You wanted to kill me, and even destroy my residence, causing a war between realms. So, I will give you a glorious death," said the Imperial Advisor. No. When King Tiandao felt the Imperial Advisor's murderous intent, a look of panic came over his face. He was King Tiandao of the Dali dynasty, the brother of Emperor Li. He had once almost taken the throne from the emperor. Bang! The Imperial Advisor did not give him a chance. He squeezed his fist, and countless brilliant beams of light shot towards it like a catastrophe of the heavenly path. They not only destroyed King Tiandao's flesh, they even destroyed his soul, giving him no chance of survival. King Tiandao, the leader of the Dali dynasty's army, had fallen. He had been killed in the grand palace of the Dali dynasty. Moreover, the one who had killed him had once been the Imperial Advisor for the dynasty. They had once been the two most important people below Emperor Li in the Dali dynasty. The Imperial Advisor was responsible for internal matters, and King Tiandao was responsible for external affairs. Now, the Imperial Advisor had slain King Tiandao. This scene was incredibly shocking for the cultivators of the Dali dynasty. Even outside the palace, countless people were watching the battle. When they saw the Imperial Advisor kill King Tiandao, their hearts trembled as well. The Imperial Advisor came a series of murmurs and shouts. The voices built up into a storm of noise that flowed in all directions. The Imperial Advisor may have been imprisoned, but he was still a prestigious figure. Many people still remembered him, especially here in the Imperial City. The people within the palace were the same. He had trained many of them. Everyone had once believed in him. Everyone had once respected him. However, he had been imprisoned because of Yi Futian. That incident had had a huge effect on the Dali dynasty. The battle in which Yen Yuan and the others had left had probably been because of this. The Imperial Advisor looked around at the people outside the palace. Everyone was watching him. Their whispers reached his ears. He said, "My residence was destroyed several years ago. Because of the order that Emperor Li just gave, I no longer owe the Dali dynasty anything. Everyone was speechless. Of course, he did not owe the Dali dynasty. He had served them faithfully but had been imprisoned because of what Li Yao had done. These past few years, he had punished himself. He had still been repaying the emperor's grace. But Emperor Li had just used him to threaten Yi Futian and had even asked Yi Futian to die in his place. He no longer owed Emperor Li, or the Dali dynasty, anything. This was a new life for the imperial advisor. He was no longer the same person that he had been. He was no longer the imperial advisor for the Dali dynasty. Boom! Up in the sky, a terrible power swept out, covering the palace and enveloping everyone within it. Everyone's hearts trembled. They could naturally feel it. It was a Renhuang-level force, a pressure that had come from Emperor Li. He had already prepared his method of killing Yi Futian for when he agreed to his condition. Once Yi Futian died, the rest of his army would shatter. But he had never thought that the imperial advisor would regain his power and even transcend his limits. He had slain King Tiandao. Was the outcome of the war between him and Emperor Xianao? There was no suspense at all. Destructive attacks fell from the sky. Everyone knew that it was the battle between Emperor Li and Emperor Xia happening high up in the air. But at that moment, it seemed that Li Yao was trying to affect the battle below with his power. His will was falling. The Peacock Emperor looked up into the sky. Emperor Li, since you asked me to witness this, I have witnessed it. You made Yi Futian promise you, and he did so. You lost your bet. Are you trying to meddle in the outcome? 9-colored light shone from his body. He spread his feathers, covering the sky and blocking the falling power, separating it from the battle below. The Peacock Emperor was taking a stand. The people of the Dali dynasty went pale. The tables had turned completely in a single instant. It had been in the instant when the imperial advisor had come back into his power. This was your choice, Emperor Li, came a cold voice that boomed through the air. Everyone looked at Yi Futian standing there despite his grave wound. He had suffered 3 attacks from a Nirvana-level ritual implement, and yet he was still alive. And he could still stand. Kill Chao Kong, came a cold voice. Chao Kong had been taken and had lost his ability to fight. He trembled with fear and went pale when he heard Yi Futian. The cultivators of the Chao clan looked shocked as well. Wu Yong stretched out his hand and slammed his fist down on Chao Kong's head with flames of the Wei in his fist. His hand suddenly turned into a flaming fist. No, there was an intense look of fear on Chao Kong's face. Your Majesty, he shouted. Now, only Emperor Li could save him. Boom. The flaming fist slammed down, and the terrifying flames of the Wei entered Chao Kong's mind, making him scream miserably. The flames burned his body. An incredibly powerful and talented figure of the Dali dynasty had come to such a miserable end. Yi Futian looked up at the imperial advisor and said, Teacher, the Prince Regent always tried to destroy your residence. Kill him. The Prince Regent had been a part of many things in the past. It could be said that he had even urged the imperial advisor to go to the Crimson Dragon realm and fight Yi Futian. If it had not been for him, perhaps none of this would have happened. A look of panic came over the Prince Regent's face when he heard this. He had witnessed how the imperial advisor had destroyed King Tiandao with his own eyes. He had crushed him, killing him so decisively that he had had no hope of escape. If the imperial advisor acted against him, his fate would be the same as King Tiandao's. He would be crushed. As he thought of this, he turned to flee. In this hopeless situation, he chose to flee rather than fight. Up in the air, the imperial advisor cast his gaze over him. He strode through the air and appeared in front of the Prince Regent. The Prince Regent looked up and saw the figure overhead. Brilliant light flashed as if the power of the Heaven Great Path was falling upon him. Fall, spat the imperial advisor. When he said this, the divine power of the Heavenly Great Path transformed into many divine swords that shot down from the sky, piercing through the air. The Prince Regent roared, loud as a dragon, loud enough to shatter the heavens and the earth. He raised his fist to strike, slamming into the oncoming swords. He tried to break out from the encirclement of swords, but at that moment, a beam of light shot into his eye. Slice. Another sword fell from the sky. The Prince Regent tried to block it, But the brilliant divine sword pierced through the true dragon and ran through the Prince Regent's body from the head on down. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The Prince Regent's body was pierced in a flash. Terrible light shot out from him, and he gave a howling shriek. Under this brilliant light, his body was shattered into nothingness. The Prince Regent's body was pierced in a flash. Terrible light shot out from him, and he gave a howling shriek. Under this brilliant light, his body was shattered into nothingness. First, it had been King Tiandao, and now the Prince Regent. Both of them had lost their lives. Including Chao Kong, the Dali dynasty had lost 3 of its top figures. Moreover, their former imperial advisor had slain 2 of them. Many of the people in the palace felt a deep sense of misery. Even the prince felt this way. Those who belonged to the Li imperial family harbored murderous intent, including King Tiandao's people and the Prince Regent's people. The Dali family had been opposed to the imperial advisor's residence and were always trying to bring about the imperial advisor's downfall. In the past, you all participated in the siege of my residence, said the imperial advisor. Up in the sky, a divine array of the Great Path flashed. Ancient characters floated around him. Kill them. The imperial advisor's eyes were cold. When he said this, divine light fell everywhere, destroying everyone. No one could survive it. The people of the Dali dynasty had once thought that the imperial advisor was too kind. He knew many powerful techniques, but he did not use them. Otherwise, the Dali dynasty would have been able to destroy Emperor Xia's realm. There would have been no reason why they should have lost the Battle of the Empty Realm. But the imperial advisor had always been very careful about the techniques that he used. The imperial family all thought that he was too calm and was not fierce enough towards their enemies. Now, the imperial advisor had finally started to kill, but he had not killed the people from Emperor Xia's realm, but rather those of the Dali dynasty. He had given all his loyalty to the Dali dynasty, but even destroying his powers was still not enough. Emperor Li had still tried to control the imperial advisor's residence. And now, when the people of Emperor Xia's realm had come to save him, then Emperor Li had used his life as a way to threaten Yi Futian. He had asked Yi Futian to die in his place. Of course, this had made him completely hopeless. From now on, he owed the Dali dynasty nothing. He would no longer be their imperial advisor. And since he owed them nothing, it was time for payback. If the people of the Dali dynasty said that he was betraying them, then so be it. Qin Xiangang, came an angry voice from the sky. The world shook as terrifying destructive light fell. The imperial advisor looked up and stretched out a hand. He used the heavenly great path to block the falling destructive light. There was a loud noise as his fist was destroyed, but the imperial advisor was not harmed. Even Emperor Li's will could not kill him. Since you have already made your choice, Your Majesty, you have no right to be angry. The imperial advisor was looking into the sky. Qin Xiangang was his original name. Few people knew that. The people of the world were all used to calling him the imperial advisor. But Emperor Li naturally knew his true name. Emperor Li wanted to kill Yi Futian and had done all he could to do so. This was his decision. At the moment that he had made the decision, nothing could be changed. Fate was set. Anger and regret would be meaningless. He did not regret letting Yi Futian go in the past. He did not regret destroying his own powers to give Yen Yuan and the others a chance to live. Now, he had begun slaughtering the people of the Dali dynasty. Even if the people of the world spurned him for it, he would still not regret it. This was his choice. Another attack fell, and many people were killed on the spot. Imperial advisor. At that moment, Li Xian stepped forward. He rose into the air and stood before the imperial advisor. He and Li Yao had once both been close to the imperial advisor and had desired to study under him. The Dali dynasty has treated you shamefully. But is this what you truly want? Asked Li Xian. Imperial advisor. King Li and some others stepped forward as well. They all knew that as long as the demon peacock emperor was helping him block Emperor Li's attacks, then Emperor Xia's people would not even need to get involved to defeat them. None of them could stop the imperial advisor when he was like he was today. Imperial advisor. On the ground, some people were even kneeling. They looked up at the figure in tattered robes up in the sky and begged him for mercy. Seeing all those figures, the imperial advisor sighed inwardly. He had so much bitterness in his heart, but after he had spent so many years in the Dali dynasty and trained so many of their youths, and there were those among the princes who had done him no wrong, and in the past, Emperor Li had treated him well. Otherwise, he would not have always done his all for the Dali dynasty. He sighed inwardly again, then turned and walked towards Futian. Futian watched him come. "Let's go, teacher," he said with a smile. The Peacock Emperor had no quarrel with Emperor Li. He was shielding them from Emperor Li's madness. He would not really ally with Emperor Xia to kill Emperor Li. If they could kill him, that would be great, but what if they couldn't? Emperor Li would vent his rage by slaughtering the people of Emperor Xia's realm and the demon Peacock Emperor's realm. Could Emperor Xia and the Peacock Emperor keep a constant watch on him? And even if they watched him, could they stop him? Thus, they could not really destroy the Dali dynasty. And in principle, this battle between the three emperors had not broken any rules if it all ended here. This was a terrible defeat for the Dali dynasty. Emperor Li had displayed a fierce and decisive nature, but it had all been for the purpose of killing Futian. But he did not dare to harden his heart and try and destroy them both together. The imperial advisor nodded. He walked up to Futian, who had once had such a weak aura, and then returned to Emperor Xia's camp. "Disperse the army," said Futian. Throughout Emperor Xia's vast army, all the divisions began to disperse. None of the cultivators of the Dali dynasty dared to stop them. They had lost 3 of their great cultivators. Now they no longer had the imperial advisor, the prince regent, nor King Tiandao. They had lost a lot of their vitality. It would probably take a long time to recover, and they no longer had the resources to challenge Emperor Xia's realm. At the very least, they would be like this for a very long while. As for the future, up in the sky, the great battle was still raging. It seemed as if the sky would collapse and the earth would split. When the great army of Emperor Xia's realm had dispersed, Emperor Xia's voice rang out through the air. "Do you still wish to continue, Emperor Li?" As he said this, beams of destructive catastrophe light fell from the sky, and 2 figures floated down slowly. The Peacock Emperor returned to his original place and stood beside Kong Xian. Emperor Li swept a cold gaze over Emperor Xia. Then he looked and saw the situation that the Dali dynasty was in. In reality, he had already seen that before. How could he have imagined that the imperial advisor would break through his state of mind in a situation like this and advance to the next level? It seemed that he had already touché the gate to the Renhuang level. The imperial advisor was Futian's only condition. He would not lead the great army in an attack. The army would disperse, and he had promised to forget this grudge. But what about now? Not only had the imperial advisor left, but he had also gone beyond the limits of his power. The Dali dynasty had lost 3 Nirvana-level cultivators. Other than that, his previous agreement with Futian was not included in this. He might come back in the future. If Futian reached a level where he could threaten him, he would certainly not let him go. The reason he had not brought slaughter to his men today was that he still had misgivings about facing a Renhuang-level emperor. Emperor Li turned and descended. He walked back towards the palace. It seemed as if he was calmly facing this tragic defeat. He did not give vent to his rage. He did not even say anything angry. This was the way things had ended, so doing any of that would have been meaningless. He had not lost this game before. And in this case, he did not think he had done anything wrong. He had lost to fate. He had bet that Futian would not have the guts, so he had pressed him hard at every step. He had put forward his conditions, prepared to do whatever it took to kill Futian. But the imperial advisor had recovered, and thus he had been badly beaten. But he had not lost to Futian. Even though he had lost, he would not lose his temper and go on a rampage. He was at the Renhuang level, so his state of mind was better than that. But he had bet the Futian would not risk that. But now it was all finished. Things had come to their end and could not be changed. Now he should be thinking about the future. Emperor Xia knew that Emperor Li was merely threatening Futian. In reality, he also would not give vent to his rage by going on a rampage. He would wait and see who backed down first. He looked up and nodded to the Peacock Emperor, and then the two of them left in different directions. They disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was as if they had never even come. Everything in the royal palace of Dali was in disorder. This was a day that the Dali dynasty would never forget. Throughout Emperor Li's city, countless people were standing there in shock, looking up at the disappearing figures. The famous imperial advisor was now far away. After what had happened, he had already been fated to leave the stage of the Dali dynasty's history, but he had still been in the royal palace of Dali. But now, the Dali dynasty had lost him forever. He had brought glory to the dynasty. Even when he left, he would never be forgotten. Now, what could the Dali dynasty use to fight Emperor Xia's realm? They had lost the empty realm, and in the future, they would probably lose even more. Of course, other than the imperial advisor, there was one other name that the people of the Dali dynasty would never forget. Futian. Everything had started with him. Of course, who could blame him? From the start, everything had been caused by Li Yao, the prince of the Dali dynasty. The man who had once thought he could crush as easily as an ant and not only cost him his life, now he had taken away one of the most significant figures in the Dali dynasty. Who could have imagined it? If Li Yao was still alive and had learned of today's battle, what would he have thought of it? In direct contrast to the Dali dynasty, Emperor Xia's realm had experienced a glorious victory. 10 army divisions had set out and swept away all in their path. They had attacked the royal palace of the Dali dynasty and laid siege to it. They had brought the imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty to Emperor Xia's realm and killed 3 great figures of the Dali dynasty, including King Tiandao. Moreover, Emperor Xia's realm had paid only a small price for this victory. This glorious victory sent great waves throughout Emperor Xia's realm. From now on, the Dali dynasty would no longer be a threat to them. Futian's fame grew even brighter. He eclipsed the princes of Emperor Xia's realm and even Princess Xia Qingyuan. Of course, as far as many people were concerned, Futian and the princess were inseparable. This battle made more people think that the future ruler of Emperor Xia's realm might be Futian. Within Emperor Xia's palace, the great army returned to their stations and all the top figures who had gathered left. Futian immediately shut himself away to heal. It would probably be a long time before he was fully recovered. In the palace courtyard, Yan Yuan, teacher Nan Zhai, Mu Chunyang, Lu Chang, and Fei Xue stood before the imperial advisor. "Teacher," called Yan Yuan and the rest. They were all smiling, just as brightly and simply as they had in their youth. Fei Xue walked forward, smiling. Tears were flowing down her cheeks. She took her father's hand and embraced him. "Father," she said. The imperial advisor hugged her gently, 1,000 feelings racing through his heart. It seemed as if he had been reborn. When Yan Yuan and the others saw this, their smiles grew even brighter. They sighed inwardly. Futian had not lied to them. He had brought their teacher back. It had begun with him, and it had ended with him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. After a few months, the news of the battle with the Dali dynasty had spread throughout Emperor Xia's realm. After a few months, the news of the battle with the Dali dynasty had spread throughout Emperor Xia's realm. But no one was able to find out anything else, just that Emperor Li's realm had made concessions on all of the issues that had caused friction between them and Emperor Xia's realm. They had no other choice, as they no longer had any way to defend against Emperor Xia's realm. Emperor Li did not make any earth-shattering moves. After all, they had suffered grievous losses, but the base of their power was still there. The royal family and all their children were still alive. The only thing he could possibly do was break the rules and attack Emperor Xia's people. And if he did that, he would pay for it with his life. Obviously, Emperor Li was not that desperate yet. Futian was recovering, and Qin Xiangang was shut up for a period of time as well. After all, he had once destroyed his own powers, and his flesh had not yet completely reformed. He naturally needed to cleanse his will and recover to where he had once been. One day, everyone went to pay their respects to Emperor Xia. Although the people who had made names for themselves at the battle with the Dali dynasty were Futian and Qin Xiangang, the former imperial advisor, They knew that the one they should be thanking was Emperor Xia. In addition, Yi Futian owed the Peacock Emperor his gratitude as well. Yi Futian and the others reached Emperor Xia's palace and bowed slightly to the emperor. "Your Majesty!" Emperor Xia and Queen Xiao were sitting there. Emperor Xia looked at Yi Futian and Qin Xiangang and said, "I trust you are recovering well?" "The worst part is already over," said Yi Futian with a smile. "No need to trouble yourself over it, Your Majesty. I must thank you for my life as well, Emperor Xia, and the lives of the people of my household," said Qin Xiangang. Emperor Xia had come personally to save the people of the imperial advisor's residence twice. "You should thank Yi Futian. If it were not for him, I would not have acted," said Emperor Xia with a smile. "But although you should not feel like you owe me anything, you should still consider coming to serve my realm. What do you think?" He had said that the imperial advisor did not owe him anything. He hoped that he would serve the realm of his own free will, not because he was returning a favor. Qin Xiangang naturally understood this, and he said, "Your Majesty, perhaps the Crimson Dragon realm would be more suitable for me." Emperor Xia nodded. "Very well. If Emperor Li does anything reckless in the future, you and Yi Futian will be the first people that I turn to. Moreover, Qin Yuan is there as well. With you there taking care of her, I do not need to worry about her." His precious daughter would probably not remain in Emperor Xia's realm. He had seen Qin Shuanggong's power on that day. He had been able to block Emperor Li's will. He knew that he had already come close to the marvelous gate to the Renhuang Plain, and even before, few were a match for him on the Nirvana level. Now, his level was truly at its limit. Even in a place like Crimson Dragon Realm, there would be few people at the Nirvana level who would be able to threaten him. He was much stronger than the people that he had secretly sent to guard Xia Qingyuan. After all, Emperor Xia's realm could not part with such powerful figures. "I will do my best," said Qin Xiangang. "Yi Futian, the people of the 9 great tribes are not needed here. You may take them all with you," said Emperor Xia to Yi Futian. These were people that Yi Futian had conquered in the Crimson Dragon realm, and he had sent them here to help Emperor Xia's realm guard against the Dali dynasty. Now that the Dali dynasty could no longer threaten Emperor Xia's realm, he was letting Yi Futian take them back. Yi Futian nodded. Very well. He knew that this time when he returned to Qianye City, they would replace the ancient imperial city and become the foremost city in Crimson Dragon Realm. There was no doubt about it. This was something that he could not have imagined before he had come here. "There is someone else who would like to see you, Yi Futian," said Emperor Xia. Yi Futian was curious as to who it was. Emperor Xia looked out of the hall and called, "Lu Yu, bring him in." Very soon, Lu Yu brought a man into the hall. He was wearing a black robe, and his aura was very weak. He had obviously been grievously wounded. Moreover, his face was dark, as if he had been poisoned. Yi Futian stared at him. He seemed to be lost in thought. "This is the one who poisoned your friend. His powers have been destroyed. How would you like to deal with him?" Emperor Xia asked Yi Futian. "Let him live or die of his own accord," said Yi Futian. In reality, who already knew who had been behind the whole thing. Now, Emperor Xia seemed to want to settle the whole affair. "Father," came a voice. Xia Kuan walked inside the hall, then knelt to the floor, saying, "I have made a mistake." Xia Qingyuan was watching everything calmly. This would all finally be settled. "What do you think, Yi Futian?" Emperor Xia asked Yi Futian. His opinion was obvious. They did not need to say too much about the things that had happened. They remembered them well enough. His Highness has admitted his mistake, and Linger and the others are in good health. "You should be lenient, Your Majesty," said Yi Futian. In reality, this went against what he had originally wanted. If it were up to him, Xia Kuan would be destroyed. However, he had to consider everything that Emperor Xia had done for him, as well as Xia Qingyuan. Today, he and the imperial advisor had come to thank Emperor Xia. To turn around and punish the prince would show that they were not grateful. Of course, the reason he could say this was because, in the end, everyone was still alive and well, and because the imperial advisor was standing there by his side. Otherwise, he would not be nearly so calm. "His crimes were not just against you," said Emperor Xia. "Xia Kuan, from now on, you are stripped of your status as a prince. It will be better for you to prove yourself in the outside world rather than conspiring behind the scenes. Xia Kun went pale, but he still bowed and said, "Yes, father." On saying this, he turned and left, not looking at Yi Futian or the others. He knew that starting from today, he would no longer have his status as a prince of Emperor Xia's realm. He was just a saint-level cultivator. He would no longer have cultivation resources. From now on, he would have to rely on only himself. Yi Futian turned and watched Xia Kun leave. There was nothing wrong with Emperor Xia's justice. Xia Kun had once tried to help Shao Xing kill him, and he was indeed not the only one who had been affected by this. Xia Rong had nothing to do with this affair, but how should we deal with him for the things he did in the Crimson Dragon realm and all of their consequences? Emperor Xia asked Yi Futian and Qin Xiangang. Qin Xiangang had been the one to suffer from his actions. Qin Xiangang bowed. "Your Majesty, the prince had his reasons for making the choices that he did, so we cannot speak of right and wrong. I am able to stand here today because of your Majesty's grace. I do not wish to pursue this matter, and neither does Futian." Yi Futian nodded as well. Since his teacher had said this, what else was there for him to say? "Your Majesty, Xia Rong has always wanted to prove himself in battle. Do not blame him too much," pleaded Queen Shao. After all, Xia Rong was the eldest son of Emperor Xia's beloved one. After Emperor Xia became a Renhuang, he could only take a queen. Later, Emperor Xia had doted upon Xia Qingyun, and the people of Emperor Xia's realm had all theorized that she would be his heir. This was probably quite troubling for Xia Rong. Emperor Xia nodded. "Fine, then I will deal with him myself." He did not announce to the crowd how he would do so. He sighed inwardly. Xia Rong was not seeing things clearly. His eyes must be opened wider. What use was plotting against the imperial advisor and winning battles against the Dali dynasty? Emperor Li was still there, and so the Dali dynasty was still the same. Those who could truly decide everything were those who stood at the peak of their power. Xia Rong would probably never have a chance to reach that point. But in the future, Yi Futian was destined to take over Emperor Xia's realm and the Dali dynasty. Thus, this whole affair was mostly meaningless. Very well, these matters have all been taken care of. You may all set yourselves at ease and depart. Emperor Xia suddenly smiled. Yi Futian would naturally not stay in Emperor Xia's realm for long. He knew that many people of the realm were discussing whether or not he would be their new ruler in the future. But he knew that Yi Futian did not belong to Emperor Xia's realm. If he truly took charge of the realm in the future, he could only bring it to even higher levels. But this all rested on the assumption that Yi Futian would survive. If he died, then all of this would come to nothing. And Yi Futian's family background was not simple at all. His future would undoubtedly bring great disturbance to the world. Thus, he would not live a pampered lifestyle. He was more suited to struggling and training in life or death situations, cultivating his state of mind, his will, and his authoritativeness. Yi Futian was very smart, and his will was extremely firm. But what was holding his back was that he often cared too much. For example, during the bet at the royal palace of Dali. If he could have been more ruthless, he would not have lost to Emperor Li. This was his weak point, but it was also an advantage. Because this was the way he was, many people flocked to his side. Otherwise, how could the people who had once been of the imperial advisor's residence have appeared by his side? If he had not been the way he was, the imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty would still be the imperial advisor. Yi Futian nodded. For now, things in Emperor Xia's realm were settled, and there was nothing more to worry about. He already had a good base in the Crimson Dragon realm. He had already cultivated in the regional palace, and Qi Shang knew him. He was very famous there as well. It would not be long before he had a chance to leave. "When are you preparing to leave?" asked Emperor Xia. "In a few days. I'm sure that you hate to part with the princess, and my friends and I would like to go and see the Holy Ji Palace. We will leave when we return," said Yi Futian. "Ah." Emperor Xia thought for a moment. "When the time comes, I will have some powerful people bring their descendants to the Crimson Dragon realm. You won't need to worry about them. The wider world will have a better stage for them, and let them advance even higher. They will be responsible for their own cultivation." Yi Futian nodded. I understand. In reality, he had never worried about those people. They had seen to their training, and he had never been sure if they were in Qinya City or not. What Emperor Xia had said was exactly correct. Cultivation was his business, and he would help people as much as possible. Very well, you may leave, said Emperor Xia with a wave of his hand. Yi Futian and the others bowed and left with Qin Shengeng. As they exited the hall, Yi Futian let out a sigh and smiled. Teacher, brothers, I never thought we'd have a chance, said Yi Futian with a smile. He had thought that he and the others were on different sides, and their relationship as masters and students would only last for a certain period. Are you satisfied? Asked Teacher Nanzhai with a smile. No, I envy you all. You have all been lucky to have such an outstanding disciple like me, said Yi Futian with a smile. He walked away from them. Qin Shengeng, Yen Yuan, and the others watched his retreating figure with a smile. This guy was outstanding indeed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Qingzhou City was in the Eastern Sea region of the Nandu Nation in the 9 states, within the land of 100 nations. Qingzhou City was in the Eastern Sea region of the Nandu Nation in the 9 states, within the land of 100 nations. The island city was as quiet as ever. Although its status within the Nandu Nation was no longer the same as before, it still seemed to exist outside of the world, with very little in the way of excitement. Within the peaceful island city, Qingzhou Lake was still as beautiful as ever. Pleasure boats crisscrossed the surface of the lake without end, especially just as evening was falling, making the scene much more lively. Many of the people of Qingzhou City were gathered here, enjoying the beautiful scenery. 2 figures were playing chess in front of a residence on the lakeside. They sat in the cool breeze very comfortably. People would occasionally steal glances at them, but they were not disturbed. They had grown used to it. Father, you made a bad move there. It looks like you will never be a worthy opponent for Uncle Hua, not even in 10 years. Beside them, there was a beautiful woman who looked like she was about 30 years old. Her smile was bright and simple, and the years seemed to not have left their mark upon her. I'm getting old. It's getting easier and easier to be careless, said Qin Shuai. So if you weren't old, you would be winning, said the middle-aged man across from him with a smile. It was Hua Fenglu. He had a weathered and worn look to him, but you could still see on his face what kind of a hero he had been when he was young. You are truly ruthless, said Qin Shuai with a smile, putting down a piece as he spoke. The game isn't over yet. It's been so many years, and you still haven't gotten used to it, came a laughing voice. Qin Shuai turned in confusion and saw a boat coming across Qingzhou Lake. A white-robed youth was in it. He stepped ashore and walked towards them. This man was clothed all in white, and his hair was like silver snow. He seemed to be one with the world around him. It was as if there was nothing unusual at all about him appearing there. He seemed a part of the landscape. Qin Shuai stood up and stared in shock at the young man who had just appeared. He was even more obviously an outstanding person now, and he seemed even to be otherworldly. Hua Fenglu looked at him as well. At first, he was stunned, but then he smiled. He looked back to the chessboard and moved another piece. Aren't you cultivating far away from here? Why on earth have you come so far? He muttered. I was afraid that you would have carelessly gotten old. Yi Futian walked to his side and squatted. He looked at the chessboard and said, It's been 10 years. Did you not want me to come back? His trip had lasted 10 years. No, said Hua Fenglu. A sour look came over Yi Futian's face. Hua Fenglu was so unfeeling. A couple of days ago, someone was chattering about how that rascal Futian had been gone for 10 years, and how unfilial that was. He asked my brother to go to the Eastern Barren Territory and see what he could find out. Why is this happening today? A figure walked over, holding a cup. The former foremost beauty of the Nandu Nation was now marked by the passage of time. She was still beautiful, but she had begun to show wrinkles. Masteress. When Yi Futian saw her, he felt a bit guilty. He had indeed been unfilial. When did that happen? Why don't I remember it? Hua Fenglu repudiated her. Nandu Wanim came over to look at him. Her eyes were slightly moist. She looked at her son-in-law Yi Futian as her own biological son. "Why are you crying, mistress? Isn't this a happy occasion?" Yi Futian said as he took the cup from Nandu Wenin's hands. "I'm back. I am not crying. It's good to see you. You've made me very happy." Nandu Wenin reached out and lightly touched Yi Futian's face and silver hair. This man was already one of the most talented youths in the 9 states, but in her eyes he was still just a little boy. "You lose," said Qin Shuai with a smile. Hua Fenglu looked at the chessboard. It seemed that his last move had been a fatal mistake. "Let's not play anymore. This kid has ruined my mood and I can't play right," said Hua Fenglu as he messed up the chessboard. Nandu Wenin smiled brightly. This guy had said that he did not want Yi Futian to come back, but if that was the case, then why had he played so badly? "You're right, it's all my fault," said Yi Futian with a smile. Yi Futian gave the cup to Hua Fenglu and said, "Have some tea." Hua Fenglu took it, and Yi Futian gave another cup to Qin Shuai. "You still look so young and beautiful, sister," said Yi Futian to Qin. Qin looked at him, and he saw that she was smiling brightly as well. Her eyes were wet with tears. He was just like he had been in the past. Other than the fact that his aura was more imposing, it was like he had not changed at all. "Knock." Hua Fenglu rapped his knuckles on Yi Futian's head and said, "You're acting like your father-in-law doesn't exist." "I'm sorry," said Yi Futian with a sour look. Everyone laughed, even Hua Fenglu. Time healed all wounds. Hua Fenglu had made progress over the 10 years, and now Qin Yi was like his daughter. She would often spend time with him and Nandu Wenin. "Let's go to the lakeside." Hu Fenglu stood up and walked towards Qingzhou Lake. Yi Futian walked by his side. The evening was falling, but Qingzhou Lake was becoming more and more lively. There were more boats upon it, and whenever anyone would see Hua Fenglu or Qin Shuai, a look of respect would come over them. But no one disturbed them. Some people paid attention to Yi Futian. They could not help but stare at him. He was so imposing that even if you only got a glance of him, you would never forget him. However, it had been 10 years, and the people at the lake at that moment were young men and women. None of them knew what the appearance of this silver-haired youth meant. After all, 10 years in a small city was a long time. "Where are you cultivating nowadays?" Hua Fenglu said lightly as they reached the lake. Nandu Wenin was standing beside him calmly, and Qin Shuai and Qin Yi stood on the other side. "The Crimson Dragon Realm. I just returned to Emperor Xia's realm for a time, so I came to see you and the Masteress," said Yi Futian. "A realm, huh?" murmured Hua Fenglu. "That must be far away." Yi Futian nodded. "Very, very far." "What level have you cultivated up to?" asked Hua Fenglu. "I'm a saint," answered Yi Futian. Hua Fenglu nodded. Saint had once been the highest level that anyone in the 9 states had reached. He understood what it meant for Yi Futian to have reached that level. But when he thought of the statue of Emperor Yi Qing, the saint level must be far away from his goal. "You must have gone through so much over the years, Futian. We want to hear all your stories," said Nandu Wenin softly. "All right, then I'll tell you." Yi Futian nodded slightly. And so, before he left, he told them everything. He talked about Emperor Xia and Xia Qingyuan, as well as the imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty and the Crimson Dragon realm. The breeze picked up, and fireworks cracked above Qingzhou Lake. They were extremely beautiful. As Yi Futian spoke, the whole group was sitting on the lakeside. Hua Fenglu and the others listened quietly. Yi Futian's voice was the only sound on the wind. Every story seemed to have taken place over an entire lifetime. Even though they had not experienced it themselves, Hua Fenglu and the others still felt the thrill of these experiences. They were scared for Yi Futian sometimes, and happy for him other times. The imperial advisor is worthy of respect. "He is even more worthy than I am of being called master," said Hua Fenglu. "The masters that I have met at every stage have been the best ones possible. They are all worthy of respect. But you were my first master, and you are my father-in-law, so you must be the best of them," said Yi Futian. "I see you haven't lost your skill for sucking up," said Hua Fenglu. Then he thought of something and said, "This Princess Qingyun seems pretty impressive." Yi Futian looked at him in surprise, but Hua Fenglu smiled and said, "Emperor Xia would be a good father-in-law as well." Futian saw that smile on Hua Fenglio's face. He knew his teacher was being sincere. He wanted to say something, but he did not open his mouth. He wanted to tell him the news that Jiyu might still be alive, but he was afraid that this faint hope would be extinguished, which would only increase his teacher's sorrow. Thus, in the end, he said nothing. He looked out over Qingzhou Lake. Many pleasure boats appeared before him. A small boat was coming towards them, with many people on it. It was very light. There was a young woman of 18 or 19 on the boat. She was as beautiful as a jade statue, and all the youths around her were looking at her. This woman was the foremost beauty of the city of Qingzhou, Mu Xiu of the Mu House. She seemed to see all of them, and the boat came over towards them. As it drew near, she saw Futian, with his handsome, unblemished face, his imposing manner, and his silver hair. He was clearly full of stories, and his eyes were dazzling. She had had many suitors and had seen all the heroes of Qingzhou City. But with a single glance at the young man before her, her previously calm heart began to flutter. But she had not come for Futian. She turned her gaze towards Hua Fenglu and bowed slightly. "Greetings, sir." "Miss Shiyu." Hua Fenglu nodded politely. "I request that you take me as your student, even if you only teach me to play chess or music. Please take me as your disciple." Mu Xiu bowed again, showing the utmost courtesy. Hua Fenglu was a legend in Qingzhou City. 9 years ago, he had looked with favor upon an ordinary youth, who had then left Qingzhou City. He returned a year later and was already a noble-level cultivator. A special man like this was a treasure. However, after returning, his first act had been to go to Hua Fenglio's residence to pay his respects and give his thanks. The people of the city of Qingzhou looked upon this conversation with approval. "Miss Shiyu, I've already told you that I won't take you as a disciple," answered Hua Fenglu. "Then might I be your servant?" Mu Shiyu was still being polite. Hua Fenglu shook his head. "Please leave, Miss Shiyu." A disappointed look came over Shiyu's face. At that moment, Futian spoke up, saying, "Let's go back, teacher." Hua Fenglu nodded. The whole group of them left. Mu Xiu was stunned. She looked at Futian, but the silver-haired youth did not so much as glance at her. It seemed that her beauty was not that enticing to him. She looked a little disappointed. He wouldn't take her as a disciple? And why had the silver-haired young man called him teacher? Futian and the others returned to the house. Hua Fenglu said, "All right, it's time for you to be going." "Teacher, you don't need to be in such a hurry to see me go. Are you so cold-hearted?" Futian was almost speechless. "I'm old. The mistress and I like our peace and quiet. We don't like people watching us," said Hua Fenglu lightly. Futian had shown his face, and the people of Qingzhou City would soon come around to see him. Futian sighed inwardly. He stopped walking. Hua Fenglu and Nandu Wenin both looked at him. "All right, then I'm off." Mistress," said Futian. Nandu Wenin had tears in her eyes, but she still nodded. Futian bowed to them, then waved to General Qin and Qin Yi. He turned, and his figure flashed as he shot into the sky, becoming a star. Hua Fenglu looked up at him, watching the rapidly dimming starlight. His eyes were a bit moist as well. "He's gone." Soon, that little bit of light had disappeared completely. Nandu Wenin took Hua Fenglio's hand and looked into his eyes. "You're being so open and unrestrained. Why are you crying?" "It's just the wind. It's irritating my eyes." Hua Fenglu led Nandu Wenin back into the courtyard. Qin Shui and Qin Yi watched the two of them as they walked away. Even though they were smiling, their eyes seemed a bit wet as well. They turned and left. Back on Qingzhou Lake, Mu Xiu was sitting dumbfounded in her boat. A middle-aged man was waiting by her side. When he saw the disappointment in her eyes, he said, "Were you refused again?" "It seems that he really won't take me as his disciple, father," whispered Mu Xiu. His daughter was also once the most beautiful woman in Qingzhou City. "If you keep going back, he will accept you eventually," said the middle-aged man with a smile. "But there was already a young man there who called him teacher," said Mu Xiu. "A young man? What young man?" The middle-aged man frowned. "A young man with silver hair. He was incredibly good-looking and had an imposing manner about him. I've never seen such an outstanding young man. He was not the least bit disturbed when he saw me. He did not even spare me a second glance. He is different from other people. Her mind was filled with the image of that young man. For someone like that, even after a single glance, it would be impossible to forget his face. Silver hair, an imposing manner, he called him teacher. The middle-aged man was trembling. Then he turned, and in a shaking voice, said, "Quick! Go back to Teacher Hua's place." "What's wrong, father?" This was the first time Mu Shiyu had seen her father like this. His whole body was trembling. His legs seemed like they would not support him. The middle-aged man looked at her and held her face with both hands. "Shiyu," he said, "the silver-haired young man that you saw is probably the legendary king of the 9 states." When Mu Shiyu heard her father's words, it was like she had been struck by lightning. She began to tremble slightly as well. She turned and looked in the direction they had come from. The legend circulating through the city of Qingzhou had seemed so distant, but now it seemed so close. He was the figure from that legend. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Back in the Crimson Dragon realm, everyone had been gone from Qinya City for several months. Back in the Crimson Dragon realm, everyone had been gone from Qinya City for several months. Before they left, Futian had used the sword matrix of the void to attack the ancient imperial city so that they would not dare to do anything foolish. The 9th servant had indeed not done anything foolish. He did not care about anyone else in Qinya City. His only target was Futian. In the time after Futian and the others had left, the 9th servant had officially left the city. He had sent people to Qinya City, and they had destroyed another sword matrix of the void there. Moreover, he created a spatial matrix in the ancient imperial city. It was a 2-way teleportation matrix, and the other side of it was in a residence in Qinya City. At the same time, the 9th servant and the people of the ancient imperial city captured Futian's former subordinates and prevented them from leaving the city to spread the news. He had lost that battle in the past because he had been the first to be injured by the sword matrix of the void. This had profoundly affected his combat ability, giving his opponent a chance to find a way to beat him. Now, Futian and the others had actually dared to leave in such a careless manner. All they had to do was destroy the sword matrix of the void, and once Futian returned, he could teleport to that residence in Qinya City. At that time, if he wanted to go and watch, who could stop him? Otherwise, Futian would never come back. This way, he would take the most vicious vengeance possible for Xing Kai's death. Many people in Qinya City were worried about Futian. For example, a man of the Situ family knew that if an enemy like the 9th servant would be so daring as to directly come here even under the threat of the sword matrix of the void, he must have some tricks up his sleeve. If Futian came back, it would be a disaster. Now, the cultivators of the ancient imperial city had conquered Qinya City. No one dared to stop them, nor would they be able to. At that moment, the head of the Situ family, Situ Zhong, asked the man who had come in, "What is the situation outside?" "The ancient imperial city has almost conquered Qinya City. We are being watched and we can't go out. Otherwise, the 9th servant will probably act against us," said the man. Situ Zhong sighed miserably. What was Futian thinking? Without a great weapon like the sword matrix of the void, how could they deal with someone like 9th servant? Unless they had carved defensive sword matrices of the void in other cities before they left, they would have no way to return to Qinya City. But could it be that Futian had no idea what was going on in the city? Once he got back, things would go very badly. "How are there so many people from the ancient imperial city here?" asked Situ Zhong. The ancient imperial city was the foremost city besides Crimson Dragon City, but this was because of the 9th servant's prestige. In reality, the ancient imperial city did not have a huge population. The 9th servant was the symbol of the city. There are also those from Xiang City. They probably have not forgiven us for the death of that Nirvana-level figure, and they want revenge, answered the man. Xiang City again? Situ Zhong frowned. Ever since the Battle of the Crimson River, when Yusheng had crushed Xiang Nan of Emperor Xiang's realm, they had always been looking for trouble. And every time they were frustrated, they seemed to be unwilling to give up. It is probably because they are jealous, said Situ Yen, walking up. Ever since Yu Xing defeated Xiang Nan, he has not gone out at all. It has affected his state of mind. Even to this day, he has not become a saint. Afterward, Xiang Zhe had come to participate in the peach banquet. However, with Yi Futian there, he had not managed to gain any benefit from this. He was merely reduced to the role of villain. This must have been hard for Xiang Zhe to bear. This was added to his previous grudge against Yi Futian. He is definitely mixed up in this as well. So Emperor Xiang's realm retreated and then allied with the ancient imperial city. With their power added to that of a high-level cultivator like Ninth Servant, they are probably feeling confident, said Situ Zhong coldly. At any moment, the people from Xiang City could retreat and go back to Emperor Xiang's realm. Xiang City was just their foothold in the Crimson Dragon realm. They could afford to lose it. What can we do now? Asked Situ Yen. In this situation, there is nothing we can do. We can only hope that our Lord has some plan. Now that he has led all of our cultivators out of the city, he has probably thought about how Ninth Servant would deal with him and see how he should react, said Situ Zhong. Situ Yen nodded. There was indeed no other way. It was not just them. Everyone in Qianya City knew the situation they were in. The ancient imperial city had completely invaded them. Everyone was worried about Yi Futian and the others. Yi Futian still had an imposing reputation in Qianya City. This man, whose name resonated throughout the Crimson Dragon realm, and Yu Sheng were two of the most powerful figures in the land. They were on the regional king ranking. These legendary figures were from Qianya City, and thus the people of the city felt honored. In a great palace in the ancient imperial city, Ninth Servant had his eyes closed in meditation. At that moment, someone came forward. Ninth Servant opened his eyes and looked at the man. It was the prince of Emperor Xiang's realm, Xiang Zhe. What is happening below the palace? Ninth Servant asked indifferently. There are some matters of cultivation that I wish for you to teach me, said Xiang Zhe. They had sought an alliance with the ancient imperial city, and Ninth Servant had not opposed them. Some of the cultivators of Emperor Xiang's realm were stationed in the ancient imperial city. Once Yi Futian appeared, he would head over directly using the space teleportation matrix. He would kill him in a single blow, not giving him any chance. Fine. The Ninth Servant nodded. Xiang Zhe was taking advantage of his opportunities. He had asked him for guidance on many occasions. But he did not refuse. Xing Kai had been killed, and now all he had left was the little master Xing Chou. It would be advantageous for Xing Chou to make friends with good backgrounds. Ninth Servant gave Xiang Zhe some pointers about his cultivation, after which Xiang Zhe said, Yi Futian and the others have been gone for a long time, they will probably be coming back soon. I am not worried, said Ninth Servant indifferently. Xiang Zhe smiled and nodded. With your great power, there is indeed no need to be worried. As long as no Renhuang-level figures interfere, you will be able to easily kill Yi Futian of Emperor Xia's realm. There is no need for you to wait here. The Ninth Servant did not say anything. He naturally could not leave the Crimson Dragon realm and go find Yi Futian and kill him. If he ran into Emperor Xia somewhere, he would die a horrible death. He was strong, but not as strong as a Renhuang-level figure. Here in the Crimson Dragon realm, he had protective charms. There was almost no one below the Renhuang level who could be a match for him. As they were talking, a bright flash of spatial light shot up into the clouds far away. The Ninth Servant looked up at it. He suddenly stood up straight and walked out into the air. A figure flashed over towards them incredibly quickly, then bowed and said, My lord, Yi Futian has returned to Qianya City. When he heard this, a powerful aura bloomed from Ninth Servant. Let's go, he said in a loud, clear voice. He stepped through the air as he said this. Many figures from the Lord of the ancient imperial city's residence stepped into the air at the same time. Gai Huang was there as well, and the cultivators that Xiang Zhe had brought along. Let's go, called Xiang Zhe in a clear voice. They were all moving extremely quickly. They had to get to the matrix and activate it before Yi Futian and the others did. In but a moment, the line of people that Ninth Servant was leading descended upon the matrix. The brilliant spatial light of the great path shone, seeming to cut through the ancient road of space. They all disappeared in a flash. Once Yi Futian and the others reached Qianye City, they felt that something was wrong. It seems that someone is sending us some information, Wu Yong whispered to Yi Futian. Yi Futian nodded, but his expression did not change. They had left, leaving behind an empty city. How could the ninth servant not have made preparations for this? This was, without a doubt, a great opportunity. If his teacher were not fully recovered, this would be a problem. But now, there was no need to think about anything. If the ninth servant was not going to give up and was going to attack them directly, then he would have to stay here forever. The group walked towards the city lord's office. All along the way, things seemed to be wrong. At that moment, a voice came up from below them. Lord Yi, I am a member of the Situ family. Don't go back to the city lord's office. Yi Futian looked down there. There was a figure on the road below them, but he was not looking at them. Suddenly, Yi Futian knew exactly what was going on. But he did not stop walking. Before long, the city lord's office appeared in their field of vision. Before they descended, a blast of powerful aura rose from the direction of the city lord's office. It swept out through the sky, covering them within it. A group of figures appeared there, and among them were the ninth servant, Gai Huang, and others. Their auras were mighty, especially the ninth servant's. His will bloomed, covering everything up to the far reach of the sky. Everyone in the area felt a suffocating pressure. Yi Futian swept his gaze over them. Besides the ninth servant and the others from the ancient imperial city, he also saw Xiang Zhe of Emperor Xiang's realm. Moreover, there was cold, murderous intent in Xiang Zhe's eyes as he looked at Yi Futian, as well as a sense of mockery. He had really come back like this, dragging the people of the 9 major tribes along with him? But even though they had a few more nirvana-level cultivators, could any of them stop the ninth servant? Yi Futian had a death wish. The ninth servant stepped through the air, only taking a single step and yet still reaching Yi Futian. He raised his hand and struck up into the air. When his fist fell, the worldly great path seemed to shatter. The area where Yi Futian was standing seemed like it was about to break. The earth shook as the ninth servant's fist turned into thousands of fists that then slapped down in the blink of an eye. But at that moment, another figure stepped forward from beside Yi Futian. He stretched out his hand, and the light of ancient characters wrapped around him. A divine matrix of the great path appeared in the sky, shielding Yi Futian and the others from the front. The ninth servant's fists slammed into it, and the air shook without stopping. Heaven and earth seemed like they would split. However, the dazzling matrix still shone brightly. Qi Xiangang slammed his fist out again, pushing the divine matrix forward and breaking all of the fists as it shot towards ninth servant. The ninth servant's expression changed. He struck out with both his fists, breaking his opponent's attack. He was sent flying backward. He stared at the figure that had strode forward. His eyes were bright, and his heart was pounding. Who was this man? Gai Huang, the others from the ancient imperial city, and Xiang Zhe all looked shocked as well. How could this be? Such a terrifying figure had suddenly appeared beside Yi Futian. People at the ninth servant's level were not easily found. It was the same in all the realms. They were as difficult to find in Emperor Xiang's realm as they were in Emperor Xia's realm. That is the imperial advisor of Dali dynasty, said a figure behind Xiang Zhe. It was his brother, Xiang Nan. He had been there at the Battle of Qianye City. Was the imperial advisor on Yi Futian's side now? And he had grown even stronger. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Xiang Nan was not the only one to have realized this. Some of the other people there had been in the battle all those years ago. Xiang Nan was not the only one to have realized this. Some of the other people there had been in the battle all those years ago. In particular, the people of Qianye City had all witnessed it, and they all recognized the imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty. The imperial advisor had once stood in opposition to Yi Futian and the others, but he had not been able to bring himself to kill Yi Futian. Now the two of them were walking together? Moreover, the imperial advisor had been unstoppable in that battle and had overpowered the ninth servant, forcing him to withdraw. Everyone's hearts beat wildly as they felt the intense tension. How could they be calm in this situation? They could all feel that this battle would not play out like they had imagined it would. Instead, it would go in another direction. What would happen once the imperial advisor and ninth servant started fighting? The people from the Situ clan understood what was going on. This was why he had not chosen to disperse after they had warned him, but had instead continued to face the ninth servant. Without a doubt, the most confused people were the people from Emperor Xiang's realm. The look on the two brothers' faces was marvelous to behold. The reason that they had allied with the ninth servant for this battle was that there was no risk in doing so. If they had a chance to kill Yi Futian without putting themselves in any danger, why would they not do so? Even if the ninth servant were defeated and could not kill Yi Futian, they would still easily be able to escape. And a cultivator of ninth servant's level would probably be able to crush Yi Futian anyway. But now, Xiang Zhe could feel a cold pair of eyes gazing at him. It was Yi Futian. Yi Futian stood there, his deep eyes filled with icy coldness. He had not planned to get entangled with Xiang Zhe and Xiang Nan again. The two of them may have plotted against him, but the two of them had a Renhuang realm to back them up. As long as they did not affect him too much, it would be too much trouble to deal with them. He did not want to create enemies everywhere he went, especially powerful enemies like a Renhuang realm. This would make it very difficult for him to travel around. But he had not counted on his enemies targeting him no matter where he was. This time they had come here to kill him. Who did not know of the conflict between the ancient imperial city and Qianya city? Xiang Zhe's face fell, then he looked in another direction, towards where the ninth servant and Qi Shengang were. The fight between them would decide the outcome of this battle and would determine the outcome of the struggle between the ancient imperial city and Qianya city. However, Yi Futian did not bother to wait for the outcome of their fight. "Take them all," he said calmly. As he said this, a group of Nirvana-level cultivators stepped forward, including Zhu Kai and others. At that moment, his Nirvana-level cultivators completely outnumbered his opponents. "Your Highness, we must retreat," said a Nirvana-level cultivator of Emperor Xiang's realm. Just as he said this, a fist descended. This was the elder of the Zhong tribe's attack. Now they had no way to escape. They could only honestly submit to Yi Futian. They naturally had to try their hardest to get back into his good graces. Thus, they took a more active stance than Wu Yong. The great battle broke out in an instant. Gai Huang was strong, but several Nirvana-level cultivators targeted him and trapped him. Another fierce battle broke out at the city lord of Qianya city's office. The people of Qianya city were already numb to it. This was not even as bad as things normally got here. Yi Futian stepped forward, and Wu Yong stayed behind him, guarding him. Yi Futian could use his skills to fight. Thus, it was most optimal for him to stay near Yi Futian. Xiang Zhe looked frightened as Yi Futian came near him. He tried to flee. "You want to flee even now?" Yi Futian grabbed for him and space will fell. Xiang Zhe felt like his body had frozen. It was as if he was under an immense amount of pressure. Brilliant light bloomed from him. The divine light seemed to be Renhuang's brilliance. However, the brilliant light did not bloom in time. Yi Futian was already there. The star-plucking handprint reached through the air with a loud whoosh. Xiang Zhe was not strong enough to resist it. He was grabbed easily, and his face instantly turned pale. Crack! A crisp sound rang out. Xiang Zhe cried out in pain as his bones seemed to snap. Yi Futian waved his hand, and the giant handprint slammed into the ground with a bang. Xiang Zhe was smashed into the ground so hard that his body made a dent. He struggled to crawl out of the hole his body had made, but he saw a foot coming down toward him. It forced him back down into the hole with another bang. He spat out a mouthful of blood. A furious look came over his face. Yi Futian was humiliating him this much. Not far away, Xiang Nan's face was as pale as ash. As he watched what was happening to his brother, it was like he was looking at himself. Does Xiang City think that Qianya City is a good target to bully? Yi Futian stepped forward and picked Xiang Zhe up from the ground, holding him by the throat. He lifted him into the air until he was dangling. He pressed down with a tiny bit of pressure, and Xiangzhe felt like he could not breathe. Xiangzhe went pale. "Do you want to make all of Emperor Xiang's realm your enemy, Yi Futian?" he said in a hoarse voice. "I don't want that, and so I never sought you out to settle our debts. But even though I don't want to make Emperor Xiang's realm my enemy, you still tried to kill me. You tell me, should I kill you?" Yi Futian was filled with cold, murderous intent. His gaze seemed to pierce into Xiangzhe's eyes. "From now on, I won't cause you any more trouble," said Xiangzhe. Yi Futian smiled bitterly. Could it be that simple? He saw that Xiangzhe was still watching the other battle. Yi Futian knew that he still had hope for the ninth servant's battle. He hoped that the ninth servant would defeat Yi Futian's teacher. "Since you want to watch so much, you can watch. Afterward, we will settle our debts." Yi Futian rotated Xiangzhe as he held him by the throat, holding him up in the air where he could watch the battle. This kind of humiliation was practically a fate worse than death for Xiangzhe. Over at the other battle, Qi Xiangang was moving forward, forcing the ninth servant to retreat up into the air. The light of the ancient characters of the Great Path flashed as they wrapped around everything in the area. A person like the ninth servant would naturally be able to feel how strong Qi Xiangang was. Someone at his level could tell what level his opponent was after only a single exchange of blows. Ninth servant knew that Qi Xiangang was, without a doubt, not at a lower level than him. He had already touched the door to the Renhuang level. He stepped forward, ignoring the distance between them. Billowing will swept out from him, shaking and shattering the very air. He smashed out with his fist, and the sky trembled and shrieked. His fist seemed like it could cross any distance to kill him. An incomparably bright light flashed, and a character that read, "Strong," was created in front of the ninth servant, like a stone of the Great Path. The character was filled with wild fist will. All the ancient characters trembled violently, causing a terrible roar. However, the characters seemed to be one with the worldly Great Path, so they could never break. Another ancient character flashed to life on the ninth servant's other side. It read, "Earth." These sounds rang out continuously as characters that were filled with the will of the worldly Great Path descended, falling all around ninth servant. They seemed to have sealed off the whole area. Everyone was trembling as they watched the scene unfolding in the air. The ancient characters of the Great Path wrapped around ninth servant and spun, giving off incomparably brilliant radiance. The whole area seemed to be bound up within them, and the ninth servant was trapped within. Someone as strong as the ninth servant, who was on the regional king's ranking, had been trapped in but an instant. No one would have thought that the battle would come to this conclusion. There was someone who could dominate the ninth servant. The ninth servant took a deep breath. He had a solemn look on his face. He knew that he had encountered the greatest opponent he would ever face in his life. After all, as a saint-level figure, he could not fight with Renhuang-level cultivators. And the man before him was the strongest man he had ever faced. He formed seals with both his hands, and his body became misty and hard to see. He turned in place as a bright light shone from him. Soon, everyone saw many figures that looked like the ninth servant appear, seeming to have superhuman powers. The air all around him trembled violently as if it would shatter under the weight of the will that filled it. Terrible fighting will burst out from his body. A beam of light shot straight up into the clouds, trying to cut through the very heavens. But up in the sky, it was smothered by the rotating characters. Rumble! A terrible aura burst forth, and countless ninth servant figures appeared at the same time, heading out in all different directions. These were not exterior incarnations. Each image seemed to have been formed out of his will. Thousands of figures appeared in every direction, lashing out with their fists at the same time. Bang, bang, bang. Incredibly loud noises rang out, and the ancient characters trembled. In every direction, the countless images seemed to overlap in an instant, and their thousands of fist wills merged, forming a single fist. Overwhelming power exploded from it. The sound of cracking rang out continuously from the wall of ancient characters. It seemed like it would shatter. And that was not all, more images appeared. They seemed to be endless. Before them, the wall of characters was about to be destroyed. Qi Xiangang stepped forward in front of the wall of characters. He reached up as if he was holding up the very heavens. And then, everyone witnessed a scene more shocking than any other. Endless ancient characters were born into the world and fell continuously into the wall that was about to shatter. A terrible divine light appeared up in the sky. "Leave," said a voice, and the brilliant divine light descended in a straight beam right to where the ninth servant was standing. It seemed like it would pierce right through him. And then, all of the rotating characters shattered and seemed to turn into endless beams of light that pierced through every one of the countless images of the ninth servant. The whole area was about to be destroyed. Ninth servant stood at the center of the area. Countless beams of light shot toward him. His body swelled, destroying much of the oncoming burst of energy, but the images around him were continuously pierced through and shattered. As the endless divine light fell, yet another beam of light shot towards him. In the next instant, all of the other countless beams of light pierced through his body. The ninth servant was frozen there. He looked up into the sky. At that moment, his life seemed to be flashing before his eyes. "Your Highness, I have failed you. I have not lived up to your trust in me." The ninth servant sighed inwardly. There were tears in the corners of his eyes. He thought of how he had been bullied when he was young. It was only when he received the care and support of His Majesty that he had been able to have a future. At that moment, he was not sad about the fact that he was about to die. His heart only ached because he was about to let down His Majesty when he had placed so much trust in him. He had tried to help the young master become the emperor with all his heart, but he had never thought that he would meet his end like this. If he had done anything wrong, it was only because the young master had come up against the wrong opponent. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the battle up in the sky. Was this the end? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Divine light fell, piercing everyone's eyes. Although the battle was taking place high up in the air, everyone in a vast area could feel the strength of the divisive and destructive will. Divine light fell, piercing everyone's eyes. Although the battle was taking place high up in the air, everyone in a vast area could feel the strength of the divisive and destructive will. When they opened their eyes, the ninth servant's figures were no longer in the air. Qi Xiangang was the only one standing there, his plain robes flapping in the wind. However, the radiance of the great path that was around him was beautiful and dazzling. The ninth servant was the city lord of the ancient imperial city and a cultivator of the regional king's ranking. He was called the most powerful city lord outside of Crimson Dragon City. He had died in battle at Qianya City. He had been slain. Everyone still felt like they were in a dream, like this was not really happening. After all, that was the ninth servant. His name had resonated throughout the Crimson Dragon realm for so many years. He had stood at the peak of the Nirvana level. He would have thought that he would have died. The former imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty was much more powerful than he had been at the Battle of Qianya City all those years ago. He had decisively crushed the ninth servant. He must truly be as powerful as was possible while still on the Nirvana level. Who below the Renhuang level could be a match for him? There were several other Nirvana-level cultivators on the regional king's ranking in Crimson Dragon City, but would they be able to resist him? Futian looked up at his teacher. Although he was more powerful than he had been, in reality, he was no more dazzling. On the contrary, his aura was more restrained now, as if he had dropped all affectations to return to his original simplicity. He stood there in his plain robes, and if he did not release his aura, he would seem just like a common person. His magnificence was all on the inside. This was what it meant to truly change one's state of mind. But his combat ability had increased by leaps and bounds. He naturally understood the ninth servant's power. He had learned of it at the Battle of Qianya City when he had wounded him with the sword matrix of the void, and yet he had still been able to force his way out and escape. The fact that his teacher was able to trap him and then slay him in combat showed just how powerful he had become. The death of Ninth Servant meant the end of an era for the people who lived outside of Crimson Dragon City. The ancient imperial city, which had once been the most powerful, had fallen. A new king had risen. Qianya City replaced the ancient imperial city as the foremost city besides Crimson Dragon City. But was Yi Futian worthy of being called the most powerful city lord? After all, he may have been the city lord, but he was only a saint of true self. There was a considerable gap between his combat ability and that of many other top figures. But many people thought very highly of him, even the former imperial advisor of the Dali dynasty. He had left the dynasty to stand by his side and fight for him. Such was his charm. This man had created a legend for himself and was considered by many to be the top talent in all the Crimson Dragon realm. It seemed that his legend had been kicked off by stepping on the back of the ancient imperial city. Would the next era be his? He had slain Xing Kai despite their difference in level. It was said that after he entered the regional king's ranking, no one of the same generation was willing to fight with him anymore. Which of them would be able to withstand him? Perhaps Yu Xing would, but Yu Sheng would not fight him. Ninth servant. Gai Huang, who was still fighting, turned pale as ash. It was over. Everything was over. Even someone as powerful as ninth servant had died here in Qianya City. He had some regrets. If he had not been so arrogant in the past and intervened when all those cultivators had besieged Qianya City to seize Emperor Kua's ruins to give as a gift to Xing Kai, there would not have been such hostility between the two sides. At that time, he had not considered Qianya City to be worthy of his notice. How could they have ever imagined that the city would one day destroy them? Xiang Zhe and Xiang Nen felt the same way. Their faces were also as pale as ash. It could even be said that they were utterly without hope. Yi Futian was still holding Xiang Zhe up in the air to watch. He witnessed the ninth servant's death with his own eyes. His death destroyed his hopes. The battle was already lost. The victory was Yi Futian's. Who could save him? How could Yi Futian humiliate him this much? It was indeed over. The outcome was decided at the moment of the ninth servant's death. The ancient imperial city no longer could resist at all. They had wanted to launch a single decisive attack. They had tried to eliminate Yi Futian and the others at the moment that they landed and had not yet had a chance to settle, relying on the ninth servant's power. But now, ninth servant was dead, and their opponents still had Qi Xiangang, who was strong enough to kill the ninth servant. Even if Qi Xiangang did not do anything else, and just watched, they still would have no way to withstand the Nirvana-level cultivators of the 9 major tribes. Moreover, they still had Yen Yuan, Yaya, and Shen Tianzhen. Their formation was so much stronger than theirs. The battle was completely one-sided. Gai Huang tried to flee, but several Nirvana-level cultivators surrounded him, blocking off his avenue of escape. Everyone knew that he was doomed. In the last battle at Qianya City, he had not shown the least bit of grace. How could Yi Futian let him go? Does that put an end to your hopes? Yi Futian asked Xiang Zhe, who he was still holding out. What are your terms? With Yi Futian holding his throat, it was hard for Xiang Zhe to speak, and so his voice was very hoarse. Yi Futian looked at him coldly, though he felt a bit sad. Even now, he was still talking about terms? He relaxed his grip, freeing Xiang Zhe. Then he slammed out with his fist, hitting Xiang Zhe in the torso. The sound of snapping bones rang out. He groaned as blood flowed from his mouth. Take him away and imprison him in the city. Lock him up with Xiang Nan, said Yi Futian. Wu Yong walked forward and took Xiang Zhe. Xiang Zhe looked up with great difficulty and saw Yi Futian staring straight forward. He was not even looking at him. Xiang Nan was taken as well. The two brothers felt sadder than they ever had before. Were they going to be imprisoned in Qianya City? What made Xiang Nan even more afraid was that Yi Futian did not even seem to care about whether he lived or died. He had said only one thing: imprison him. The feeling that this gave him was that he was not even worthy of Yi Futian's consideration. The only thing that Yi Futian was concerned about was the Renhuang realm that was backing them up. Or rather, it was only their father that concerned him. Yi Futian had initially wanted for Xiang Zhe to give him a reason to show him mercy. But unfortunately, it seemed that Xiang Zhe did not know his place. He still sought to make a deal and to talk about terms. What terms could Xiang Zhe possibly offer him? And even if they were going to talk about terms, it would be Emperor Xiang who sent people to do the negotiations. It was just like the ancient imperial city had been in the past. Now, Qinya City was the foremost city besides Crimson Dragon City. They did not have to worry about other Renhuang-level figures. Here, they were nearly without enemies. The reason he did not kill Xiang Zhe and Xiang Nan was not that he valued them. On the contrary, it was because he did not think they were worth killing. What would be the point of killing two useless people and, in doing so, earning Emperor Xiang's enmity? While they were in the Crimson Dragon realm, Emperor Xiang could not do anything to them. And what if they were able to leave one day? This was bound to happen. It was not a good thing to be remembered by a Renhuang-level figure. Of course, just letting them go was not something he could do. So, he had chosen to imprison them and let Emperor Xiang send people to negotiate. Before long, the battle had quieted down. The cultivators of the ancient imperial city had been destroyed. Yi Futian swept his gaze over the crowd. He discovered that Xing Kai's brother Xing Chou was not there. At the start, it had been because of Gai Huang and Xing Chou that their enmity had grown so deep. Now, the ninth servant had not brought Xing Chou along with him. Had he feared that this great battle would affect him? After all, Xing Kai was dead, and so the ninth servant would probably not want to put his last young master, Xing Chou, in any danger. Spatial teleportation. Yi Futian smiled mockingly. The ninth servant had ordered people to set up a two-way teleportation matrix between the ancient imperial city and Qinya City. That was really... Yi Futian was almost speechless, but he said, "Let's go to the ancient imperial city." On saying so, he stepped forward, and many cultivators followed him. They headed towards the teleportation matrix. The ancient imperial city is finished, everyone thought as they saw what was going on. It was completely finished. In the ancient imperial city, Xing Chou was standing there calmly. He had been waiting all along for news from the other side. It had been so long and they had still not come back. The battle must have already broken out. As long as the fighting had started, then Yi Futian must be dead, without a doubt. He was staring farther. At that moment, beams of brilliant spatial light flashed, seeming to form an ancient road of space. Xing Chou felt his heart surge with pride, and an excited look came over his face. "Have you returned in triumph?" He stepped forward with a smile, preparing to welcome teacher ninth servant. The light of the great path of space shone, and a group of figures appeared in Xing Chou's field of vision. As soon as he saw clearly who these figures were, he froze. His face went deathly pale as the blood drained from it. His heart pounded in his chest. In a flash, all of his thoughts ceased. How was this possible? How could this be? How could Yi Futian be the one who had come? What had happened to the ninth servant? Yi Futian swept his gaze over him. He stepped out, straight towards him, moving extremely quickly. Only then did Xing Chou react. A powerful, saint-level aura burst out from him. Crack! A bolt of lightning flashed through the air, and Yi Futian descended right in front of Xing Chou. He pointed at him. The finger that he pointed with seemed to be made of the great path itself. Xing Chou's face was filled with fear. Powerful fighting will surged out from him, but it was pierced through and destroyed by Yi Futian's finger. Snap! Yi Futian placed his finger on Xing Chou's brow, and destructive will surged into his mind, destroying everything. Xing Chou's eyes widened, and he stared fixedly at the figure before him. Was this really how he was going to die? Yi Futian did not say a word. He was simply going to kill him. At that moment, Xing Chou felt incredibly sad, as if he had just realized that he had never been an important figure. Instead, he was someone that Yi Futian could kill with a single finger. Bang! A beam of light shot out of his finger and into Xing Chou's brow. A terrible killing will shot into his mind, destroying everything there. In a flash, Xing Chou's body fell lifeless to the floor. From start to finish, Yi Futian had not said a word, as if Xing Chou had not even been worth talking to. "Young master!" The other people in the city lord's office trembled in their hearts. Yi Futian had been able to slay Xing Chou like that? Destroy the powers of the Xing Chou and the ninth servant's trusted aides. Let everyone else go. If they cause any problems in the future, kill them, said Yi Futian coldly. The rest of the people he had brought with him shot through the air, preparing to sweep through the ancient imperial city. In an incredibly short period, The most powerful city besides Crimson Dragon City had fallen to this level. After years of hegemony, they finally had to withdraw from the stage of history. Futian swept his gaze over the once ancient imperial city. If they had not acted aggressively towards him, he would not have acted against them. He left everything in the city to be coordinated by the people who had previously done so, and he returned to Qinya City. The matter had finally come to an end. Now there were no more forces that could threaten Qinya City. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The war between Qinya City and the ancient imperial city was over, and Qinya City was completely victorious. The ninth servant, the city lord of the ancient imperial city, was dead. The war between Qinya City and the ancient imperial city was over, and Qinya City was completely victorious. The ninth servant, the city lord of the ancient imperial city, was dead. It was said that Xing Kai and Xing Chou, the descendants of Emperor Zhan, had been slain by Futian. Emperor Zhan's bloodline had been completely cut off, leading many people to weep ceaselessly. Afterward, Futian named the chief of the Bailey tribe as the city lord, giving him command of the city. Other than Wu Yong's Wu tribe, all the other tribes moved into the city as well, so they were in complete control of the city. However, everyone knew that the ancient imperial city was still a vassal of Qinya City. And the status of the Bailey tribe seemed to have changed entirely. As for Wu Yong, Futian had originally thought to make him the city lord, but he wanted to stay by Futian's side to cultivate, and so he gave up the prized position of city lord. After some time, Emperor Xiang's realm sent envoys. Emperor Xiang had sent them. They brought many cultivation resources as gifts, and they were willing to cede Xiang City and promise that from now on, Emperor Xiang's realm would leave the Crimson Dragon realm. As long as Futian was there, they would not set a foot there. They also promised that they would never seek revenge for this in the future. They were willing to write off this grudge with a single stroke of the pen. Many people sighed inwardly at Emperor Xiang's courage. Although they had suffered great losses in their struggle with Futian, if they continued to pursue this grudge, their losses would further outweigh their gains. First of all, Futian's power within the Crimson Dragon realm was nearly unmatched, and Emperor Xiang's realm could never compete. Secondly, he had Emperor Xia's realm backing him up. And finally, there was his infinite potential for the future. If Emperor Xiang's realm hardened their hearts and continued fighting Futian, then even if they were able to kill him, the price they would have to pay would be far too high. The envoys that Emperor Xiang sent also secured Futian's promise that he would not pursue this matter any further and release Xiang Zhe and Xiang Nan, who had been tortured horribly. He would let them return to Emperor Xiang's realm at any time they pleased. He knew that the two of them would always hate him fiercely, but without Emperor Xiang's support, what trouble could the two princes stir up? Moreover, even though Emperor Xiang was making a promise, the two princes would still be well disciplined. Futian would trust the word of a Renhuang-level cultivator. After all, this was not a matter of life or death. After the people from Emperor Xiang's realm left, there was still the matter of Xiang City. Futian talked about it with his teacher. In the end, Qi Shengang and the people of his household went there to renovate and reorganize the city. The reason Futian sent his teacher was that he wanted to let him have his own space. There he could fulfill his ideals and continue to teach even more outstanding heroes. And Futian believed with all his heart that the Crimson Dragon realm did not lack for outstanding youths with great potential. As for Qinya City, he was still the city lord. He had top figures like Wu Yong, Shen Tianzhan, and Yaya by his side, and thus no one could threaten him. And he was making preparations to link the three cities via space matrices so that he could travel between them as he liked. In this way, Qinya City, the ancient imperial city, and Xiang City formed the greatest force in the Crimson Dragon realm. No other cities could threaten them. After this was all worked out, Futian returned to the regional palace, where he locked himself away in cultivation. Now he had cultivated up to the saint of true self level. His next goal was to become unblemished. He was sure that although he had removed many of the obstacles in his mind, it had not all been done through his own power. Most of it had been done with the help of the people beside him. But now, the Crimson Dragon realm was completely stable. As long as he did not offend any Renhuang-level cultivators, no one could threaten him. The days passed, and the 10,027th year of the Divine Prefecture calendar came to an end. A piece of shocking news spread through the Crimson Dragon realm, but thankfully it was good news. Qi Shang, the prince of the Crimson Dragon realm, was going to officially wed Yu Shifei of the Yu clan. This pair of heroes of the Crimson Dragon realm were going to be together from now on, which made everyone in the realm very happy. Countless women were jealous of Yu Shifei. Not only was she a superior specimen, but she was also able to marry someone who she loved and who loved her. And in addition to that, she was of extremely high status and was eminently talented. Prince Qi Shang and Yu Shifei of the Yu clan both had wonderful personalities as well. One of them was natural and unrestrained, and the other was gentle and elegant. They had never offended anyone, and naturally, no one would ever offend them. This made them a divine couple in everyone's eyes. They were so perfect that people almost could not even be jealous of them. They were only happy for them. At the end of the year, countless people in the Crimson Dragon realm set out on a journey to the center of the realm, Crimson Dragon City. They wanted to witness this perfect wedding. Many powerful figures also went to pay their respects and to present them with gifts. When the end of the year came, Crimson Dragon City was busier than it had ever been before. Yi Futian and Yu Sheng, who was cultivating in the regional palace, also received invitations to the wedding. They had been sent out in Qi Shang's name, and they were invited to come to the palace itself. Not many people in the Crimson Dragon realm received such an honor. The vast majority of people would only be able to watch from outside the palace. The 10,028th year of the Divine Prefecture calendar finally arrived. That was the day of Qi Shang's wedding. There was a sea of people outside the lofty palace. They seemed to be able to see a floating stage in front of the brilliant golden palace. The stage was covered in dragons and phoenixes, giving it a happy and auspicious atmosphere. There were all kinds of people from the Crimson Dragon realm within the observation area in the palace. As they walked up the stairs, they looked up at the high-hanging stage. Faint smiles came over their faces. Yi Futian had brought the others as well. Yu Sheng, who had been cultivating in the regional palace, Xia Qingyuan, Pei Min, and Yin Tianjiao all came together to pay their respects. And they were giving respects on behalf of the Renhuang realms that they represented. Yi Futian, came a voice. He turned and saw a man coming towards him. He smiled when he saw him. The man who was walking towards him was Duan Wuji, who had come from the Eastern Palace to pay his respects. An extraordinarily imposing and elegant woman was beside him. It was his sister, the princess of the Eastern Palace. "Long time no see," called Yi Futian with a smile. "It has indeed been a long time. But with all the great deeds you've been doing, I hear your name all the time," said Duan Wuji with a wide smile. This guy had actually managed to destroy the forces of the ancient imperial city. Xing Kai had been unlucky the day he made an enemy of Yi Futian. "Let me introduce you. This is my sister Liu. She is always asking about what kind of man you are. Now that you can see him, what do you think?" said Duan Wuji. Yi Futian looked at Duan Wuji. "This guy?" The woman beside him could not hide her embarrassment at what Duan Wuji said. She could not help but hit her brother, and her pretty face looked like all the blood had drained from it. How could her brother be like this? It was true that she wanted to see this legendary figure, but when he heard her brother's words, he would not be in any doubt about that fact. Yi Futian smiled and nodded to hear. Princess Luoyu. He was someone who had been in all kinds of intense situations, so this was nothing. Princess Luoyu smiled slightly and bowed. "Let's go, the ceremony is about to begin," said Xia Qingyun coldly from beside him. Her gaze was fixed straight forward. "Let's go together." Yi Futian smiled at Duan Wuji. Duan Wuji nodded and grinned at Xia Qingyuan. They walked until they reached the bottom of the observation platform. Everyone who was allowed to come here was someone of high status, and so Yi Futian saw many familiar faces like Luo Yang, who he had first met at the Peach Banquet, and Jiang Taiyi of the Jiang clan. They watched him coming. Yi Futian had displayed his unparalleled talent at both the Peach Banquet and the Battle of the Crimson River, where he had defeated Xing Kai. Now that he had become a saint of true self, they did not know just how strong he was. But this was not a time for fighting. Soon their gaze shifted. They looked back to the ceremonial stage. Up in the sky, radiant sunlight shone down. A golden rock appeared amidst the sunlight, flying by means of rule power. It flew down and seemed to form a real body for itself. There was a figure standing atop it. It was Qi Shang. On the other side, a strange phoenix that was the color of ice crystals appeared. A beautiful figure was standing atop of it, wearing a dress of ice phoenix feathers. The golden rock and the ice phoenix circled in the air, gradually coming closer together. The two people riding them clasped hands. Qi Shang was bathed in divine fire, and Yu Shifei was bathed in snow and ice. When they stepped onto the ceremonial stage, it seemed like the rest of the world had lost its color. The Yu clan cultivators all smiled brightly. They had waited a long time for this day. Dazzling light shone down from the palace as the two figures stepped forward. The Crimson Dragon Emperor and the Crimson Dragon Queen appeared. One of them had a majesty that eclipsed all else, and the other was elegant and poised. She could have been a model for all women everywhere in the world. "Greetings, your majesties." "Congratulations on the wedding," someone called out as they bowed. In an instant, countless other voices rang out as well. "Greetings, your majesties." "Congratulations on the wedding." The sound roared through the palace. Countless people were there to witness the wedding. All the women in the palace were looking at Yu Shifei like she was the luckiest woman in the world. "She's very beautiful," whispered Xia Qingyuan. At that moment, Yu Shifei was indeed blindingly beautiful, and even Xia Qingyuan could not help but express her appreciation. This must have been the happiest time of her life. Her smile was warm enough to melt the world. Her beauty engraved itself on everyone's hearts. All the women in the world could only dream of having a moment like this, of being this beautiful. Would she have a day like that? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.